Hi, how are you today? So, it's another day of let's distract ourselves from this shitty ass reality. Um, I said shitty ass, fucking caption or got that wrong. Anyway, by going through some trial exhibits. So, I plan actually on doing a live stream on some of the social issues that have come up recently. But this stream isn't about that, so we're going to focus on Google search monopoly today. But that is coming because I just feel like I should. I just feel like if I don't share my thoughts, I'm going to explode. So I'm going to share my thoughts on that soon. So, but I mean, if you know me, you probably already know which way I'm leaning with all of that. But anyway, so today what we're gonna do is continue going through the trial exhibits from the Google search monopoly case. And what I find very interesting about that is it's having me reflect a lot about not only working in general, but also particularly corporate America, which I feel can be kind of like a little ecosystem of white supremacy in a lot of cases. But particularly how um, in corporate environments, everybody is expected to be kind of a yes man. And if you voice any opinion that differs from the leader of the organization or the project or whatever, even if you're actually trying to help the project or organization be successful, if it's just not what they want, then you're seen as negative or not good. And it could be like, you know, how with Ocean Gate, there were basically people and engineers like, hey, this isn't safe, you're gonna fucking die if you keep doing this shit. And then those people were fired. You know what I mean? That type of shit is what I'm talking about, right? Like, they were trying to help you do this safely, but you fired them, you know? Yeah, like, because people are so egotistical that they don't give a fuck about like social issues and safety and doing the right thing in a lot of cases if it means like they're in charge, you know, like, and you're just doing what they want kind of thing, right? um and so I feel like Google is kind of an interesting case study for that as well, where a lot of people when they're working, they will do fucked up things under the concept of it's just their job, they're getting paid, it's a company thing. And then sometimes, and in some cases, with enough proof, you can kind of push the blame onto your superiors with the whole I was doing what I was told thing. But then sometimes that doesn't work out for you, you know? Just because you were doing what you were told, if what you were doing was wrong or illegal, you're still going to be facing some consequences because, you know, all of these people that are in these documents, right? Even if they themselves don't get charged anything, anytime they go job hunt and people know who they are with certain roles they had in this case, they're only going to get hired by people that are behaving in similar ways, you know, or they're going to have a harder time getting a job because they're in association with this and the decisions that allowed Google to be sued successfully as a monopoly, right? Like, it doesn't look good for anybody involved, regardless of what you're charged with. And I find a similar thing can happen too with like corporate environments, you know. And that goes back to, for example, I was fired from somewhere. They tried to convince me that I didn't quit, but they tried to convince me that I quit, but then they wrote that I was fired in email to me, basically saying that they were going to fire me for professional misconduct, that they wanted me gone anyway. And then, so they were trying to convince me that I quit when I know I hadn't quit. I was fired. I feel like I'm saying the wrong words, and if you clip it, whatever, fuck it, but like, it's the way my brain works. With language fluency and how I process information, I can combine things that I'm trying to say, even if I know what I meant to say, and it's really frustrating. Um, but yeah, fucking, but anyway, so, but my point is, so they signed this paperwork saying that I quit, but I never quit. I was fired, and I can prove all of this in writing, right? And so then, even if this person wants to argue she was just doing what was told by the managing partner, you know, in terms of the HR still committed the fraudulent act with the fraudulent paperwork herself, knowingly and intentionally. You know what I mean? And I don't even know if anything's going to come out of that, but I did try to do something about that. And I'll talk about that more further down the road one day, if there's any results from it. But stuff like that is what I mean, like how in corporate America, people care more about like bootlicking than doing the right thing. Anyway, so we did 4 trial exhibits last time. So I'm going to roll my intro. We're going to recap those 4 trial exhibits. We are at 90 trial exhibits total so far. And I do feel the need to clarify because, again, there are 2 cases on Google regarding monopoly. One is related to search and search ads. The other is related to ad technology. The search one is in Judge Mehta's court, Mehta. And the ad tech one is in Judge Brinkema's court, Brinkema. My finger spelling is fucked up, but whatever, you know what I meant. Probably. So, fucking, anyway. But where am I going? Alright, so let's just do this fucking bitch. I'm gonna roll the intro. I'm a little weirder than normal today. It's because all this political social shit's got me fucked up, and so I can't like distract myself by doom scrolling right now. You know what I mean? Anyway, and I will be doing a live stream about all of that because it is important to speak about, and I do support people speaking out in terms of, you know, fuck, I didn't want to do it, but here I am. Because I don't want to come off like, you know what I mean? Oh. But anyway, fuck that dude. He's looking up at all of us now. You know what I'm saying? Looking up at all of us now. Okay, alright. I'm gonna do a live stream on that soon. Okay, let's do it. Hi, my name is Alexis, also known as Lexi or Deaf Child. I was born deaf, hard of hearing. I began doing business as Deaf Child 2013, marketing 2011, sales 2009. I've earned 50 plus certifications in marketing and sales. My Bachelor of Science from Loyola University, New Orleans, with a music industry studies major and a business administration minor. Deafness runs in my family genetically. Speech is not fully accessible to me. Anyway, I'm here to bitch about whatever the fuck is on my mind. So here we go. Visit my site at noladeafchild.com. Okay, so last time we did go through 4 trial exhibits. And we are at 90 trial exhibits total so far. So we'll just see how many I can get through today. So we went through a presentation called Project Charlotte, and that one was basically kind of about revenue impact. Well, I don't really, honestly, to be honest, I don't think I know the full meaning of what the fuck Project Charlotte is, but that trial exhibit named Project Charlotte was a little presentation about search ads revenue. And from there, they were talking about the volume of queries following, you know, users signing up for loyalty with things such as Amazon Prime. And why I think this was relevant is they were looking at whether or not people using high intent keywords related to shopping if they were going to be going with other search engines through shopping. So, for example, are they going to go, when they shop online, are they going to go shop for boots through Google search, and then Google search will still get those ad revenues? Or are they going to go to Amazon.com and look for the boots there? So Google did a little presentation about the revenue related to that, and they were basically saying how, while it was true that there was a surge in people utilizing other methods of buying, that they didn't see any revenue loss, because oftentimes with retargeting and things like that of that nature, it still brought up traffic enough to keep them at their similar target, but that they were admitting that, yeah, it does kind of cannibalize it, because for example, if someone buys ads through Amazon, that's less money than Google would get than if they put all of their ad budget on Google. So yeah, but at the same time, content from Amazon ranks on Google, and so whenever certain keywords trend on Amazon, then those pages can start trending on Google, which can still drive up the prices for those ads on Google and things like that, because it's an ad auction system based on supply and demand. So I think those are reasons why it doesn't matter so much. But yeah, anyway, sorry. And then we also looked like an email between Jerry Dishler of Google and Joan Brady of Google. And this one was about Facebook. So that first presentation was more related to Amazon. Then the second email was a very similar concept, but it was an email related to Facebook. But basically, they were talking about how on Facebook there was a lower intent for purchase, which kind of makes sense, because oftentimes people go on there to doom scroll and to socialize, or not they'll end up buying shit, because people do love to buy. My voice is like going today. I didn't really realize that when I started this, so this may not be very long. But yeah, so it was basically saying a similar thing, except for they were saying, like where Amazon was saying they have very high intent, which makes sense because people go on Amazon to either window shop online or actually buy something or look for something they want to buy. Versus Facebook, people don't typically go on Facebook like, hey, I want to buy some shit. I guess with Facebook Marketplace, some people will kind of be like, let me go see if something's on Facebook Marketplace if they are looking for things. But like, if they're looking for like someone giving away something, but oftentimes it's more focused on the socializing. Okay, and then we looked at another email between Joan Brady of Google and Jerry Dishler of Google, and this was related to Q4 2019 earnings. And they called it a warning for long-term investors. And they were also in here talking further about if Amazon bidding for AdWords for the advertisers, if that would be cannibalizing from Google. They were kind of going into more of the technicalities of that and everything. But basically, the too long didn't read is that articles are being put out that Google does have a lot to lose from Amazon, because if Amazon's able to take enough market share as it relates to shopping, then they could outperform Google on the revenue from shopping search terms. And so, yeah. So that was a thing. But in the email, they were also saying that, like, the difference being, is Google is the source a lot of times for where you can buy ads. A lot of ad revenue and getting found online comes through Google, versus Amazon, when they buy AdWords for their advertisers, they are acting as a third party. You know what I'm saying? And there are different ways to run ads with Amazon, because you can run Amazon ads like boosting products and platform, versus Amazon you can still use Amazon to utilize with AdWords. That's the thing. Anyway, life is hard. Um, so we looked at that, and then we looked at another email on JP Morgan Chase marketing, and that had a presentation as well, I believe, about paid search. It wasn't really a presentation, it was just more of like a fact sheet actually, but I can see why, looking at it, I thought it was a presentation actually. But anyway, so she broke down the terminology and buzzwords behind marketing in here, when it comes to things like search engine marketing, search engine results page, etc. And she also kind of reiterated the ad auction system and how bidding worked in here. And so I think it's very important, because it was kind of highlighting how one of the top people who rank ever on Google is Chase. They're one of the most searched for organizations online. And so they were showing how they were struggling to measure the analytics of certain results because of the way Google will utilize the ad auction system to change the pricing of certain keywords and things like that. And so I think that kind of shows a way in which they were monopolizing it, and there's more to get from it than that, but that's just kind of like one thing you can take from it. So yeah, and we are here now. So now we're going to just kind of see how many more we can get through. I want to get through at least a couple of more. So yeah, next up we have exhibit UPX 0450. And this is an IPG presentation on Page Search 101. And this was from January 4th, 2020. And it was filed October 3rd, 2023. Let's see if I can get through at least a couple more of these. Ooh, this is a 30 fucking page one. Okay, we might only be doing 2 in this stream, to be honest. Yeah. Okay, so, and it says Hulu on here as well. It says Page Search 101. The presentation says, what is paid search? Search aims to deliver relevant info in the micro moments. And then it shows a Google search page where what is paid search is typed in. And it says search is a survey of the world. And it shows Hulu as a search term. And then it shows an example where a search interest is scored at 100 for Virginia, and we've done, and it looks like that's from like a trend report. We've done live streams on trend reporting from Google Trends, and that score doesn't necessarily mean the number of searches. It just kind of compares the intent of what people are searching for at a given time compared to other searches. I don't think I explained that right, but we got other videos that kind of goes into that a bit better, if that makes sense. So when it shows that like Virginia, the search interest was at 100, that just means that compared to the relevance of other times this term has been searched, as well as other search terms being looked for at the time in the area, that Hulu had an extremely high level. It was at 100% in terms of performing with its competitors. It was getting searched a lot more than other people. So yeah. But yeah, it says that search can supply information on consumer interest, interaction rates, geographical insights, verbiage, seasonality, and demographics. Which is true, because you can go to trend reports. You can look up any keyword and you can literally see what regions are people looking for this word in, what variations of this word are they searching, and related terms. You can see how old are these people, like a bunch of things. If it's reported. Anyway, and then it says search bridges the gap from other media to sales. And it shows kind of like little clip art of like Snapchat, Instagram, and Pinterest, and Twitter, and LinkedIn, or I guess X, whatever, fuck that shit, and you know, all of those like logos from social media platforms and Tumblr and shit. And then it shows clip art of search engines like Google, Yahoo, and Bing. And then it shows like a shopping cart and money and stuff. And it's a search reaches consumers at the moment of intent. So upper funnel, which is known as top of funnel, is awareness. Middle funnel is consideration, and bottom funnel or low funnel is conversion. And it says search captures hand raisers that are entering keywords or queries identifying exactly what they are looking for, whether it is a product, answers to questions, information, researching a purchase, or purchase intent, etc. For Hulu, this means that paid search is operating in the lowest part of the funnel, capturing any demand driven from upper funnel activity or users searching organically and driving them directly to the Hulu site to drive subscriptions. Search volume is contingent on consumer demand. We can create and influence the demand with other mediums, but search volume is dependent on interest and consumer demand. In other words, it's an entirely market. I don't think that makes sense. It says it's an entirely market. That doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, it's entirely market dependent would make sense to me if Anne wasn't there, so I'm going to ignore that. In other words, it's entirely market dependent, demand driven channel. Oh, now I see. Market dependent, demand driven channel. So it's a entirely market dependent, demand driven channel is what it should be. Or is it an? It's an entirely market. I don't know. That wording is throwing me off. Now I see what they mean, but trying to read it and process it in real time for whatever reason was difficult for my mind just then. Anyway, moving on. It says with Google alone processing over 2 trillion searches per year. Why does that happen to me? I don't know. Anyway, it says what is paid search? The difference between paid and organic search. All results for user queries are displayed on the search engine results page. Paid search, search engine marketing, displayed above organically listed results with brands bidding. You know, I'm going to zoom in. With brands bidding on queries or keywords through live auctions for placements within the search engine result page. Too long didn't read. Can pay for ad placements. Organic search SEO results will rank depending on relevancy in accordance with Google's internal search algorithm. And of course, SEO stands for search engine optimization. And then it says too long didn't read. Results listed depending on algorithm relevancy. Honestly, that was the same fucking thing. And then it says knowledge graph. Additional information displayed that is still relevant to the user query, but is pulled through Google's algorithm, crawling sites and metadata to populate. Info displayed is automated by engines. So yeah. So basically it's outlining what you're seeing on a search engine result page, where that content comes from. And so back in the day, they didn't have to list if something was an ad or not. So for a long time, you know, people are having a field day with that. But for a while, I don't even know the years, but for a long time now, though, they legally had to list every time it's an ad. And so the ads are usually going to be at the top or bottom. There's top or bottom placements for advertisements, and those should be labeled. And then your organic results, this changes over time. So if you're not watching this video around the time it's released, this could be different by the time you see it. But these days, what I usually see is about 3 ads if there are enough advertisers bidding for that ad spot to show. You know, you see at least 3 ads. Sometimes there will be someone bidding for it, and you might see only 1 or 2 ads. But usually, if no one else is running an ad for it, they don't even let you run an ad for that keyword, if that makes sense. Because if not, or if it doesn't have enough high search intent, then sometimes you cannot run an ad for a keyword because it just doesn't even run. It's like not even eligible in the AdWords, in the ads program. But yeah. Anyway, sorry. But so it should be 3 ads or so, and then you should see your organic result if there's ads. Sometimes there's no ads, and it'll maybe an AI generated result and then the first organic search result. Sometimes if there's no ads, it'll be either AI or a knowledge graph there. But usually what I've been seeing lately is like an AI answer, and then if maps applies, maps will be up top as well, or instead of AI. And then it'll be the organic results, a few of those, and then it'll be the knowledge graph is what I've been seeing a lot. But that changes all the fucking time. Alright, moving on. It says, how do paid and organic search interact? Oh, I love this part right here because I talk about this a lot, right? Because paid will get you up there immediately, but organic is long term. And by doing paid, right, long term paid can help your long-term SEO, because if it does answer the search result and people are staying on your site and engaging with it, Google will take those social rankings and those social cues to help your page rank higher over time. But overall, when you pay for placement, that's an immediate result. When you stop paying for the placement, you no longer place. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, it says paid SEM and organic SEO search working together are more than the sum of their parts. 49% of paid search only click-through rate plus 16% organic search only click-through rate equals 80% combined click-through rate. And they label this as synergy. So basically they're saying you get a lot more clicks on paid search, because a lot of people, they don't give a fuck if it's an ad or not. Some people, if they see it's an ad, they will literally not click on it just because it's an ad. But a lot of people, they don't give a fuck if it's an ad or not. Like, if it solves what they're looking for, then they're going to click the page. So and if something is at the top of the page, it's more likely to get clicked typically. So it's just what it is. But yeah. And then it says, how does the math work out? And then 2 plus 2 equals 5. Google headed a search study in 2012 which summarized that 50% of clicks generated by paid ads are not exchanged by organic clicks when the ads are gone. And the website has the top position organic search ranking. And this is what the Kool-Aid man breaking through a wall is saying on this search slide. I forgot to say if you're not looking at it, but basically they're saying that half of the clicks that you get from paid ads are not exchanged by free clicks after you stop paying for them. So yeah. And then search engine marketing, which is paying for ranking online, and search engine optimization, which is when you rank for free organically, have synergistic benefits to performance when both are live on the search engine results page. Some additional benefits include 1. Brand visibility, ownership of all available digital real estate. This doubles the website visibility on the search engine result page. You have multiple points of entry to drive website traffic, and you can control over messaging and user experience. And sometimes, depending on the word, especially if it's branded for you, you have the opportunity to show up 3 times on the page if you can hit the knowledge graph, the paid result, and the free result. Number 2, keyword data sharing and testing. Incrementality. Number 3, Best performing social engine marketing ads. Did I say social? Best performing search engine marketing ads informing organic content strategy. And that's another thing. This gives you real-time analytics as well to how people are behaving. And yeah, you do get those analytics anyway from your organic results, but you get faster analytics and when you pay for it because you were paying for more traffic, so you can see quicker how people respond to something versus if you do it organically, you have to wait longer to see how that traffic responds. So when you can pay for something to test the response, then that can help you determine what you should be doing long term because of what people are responding to immediately, if that makes sense. But at the same time, you can't always let a short-term trend deter you from your long-term strategy. So you also have to balance that too. But anyway, so number 4, search engine marketing, maintaining visibility for pages under indexing organically. Both niche and popular titles for site content and originals, temporary landing page and or website experiences such as Black Friday. So yeah, that's kind of reiterating what we were saying before too. Basically saying if something isn't performing well, you can get it better shown. Number 5, increase click-through across paid and earned search. Differences in paid and organic search. Paid search, which is search engine marketing, you have real-time results, instant, highly targeted messaging, biddable inventory, and your system is built to allow competition within crowded verticals. So because it's an ad auction system, everybody has a budget. So eventually people's budgets are going to cap out. Now, some of the bigger companies, they have such a big budget that when you compare them to each other, they can outbid and outperform each other. Like there's still competition always when it comes to some of those bigger giants. But when it comes to a bigger company compared to a small local mom and pop, like if you're looking at JCPenney's versus the random clothing store downtown, I don't know. When you're looking at different people's abilities to fund advertising, the person running their random thrift store on Main Street in the middle of a suburban town isn't going to have the same advertising budget or the same capacity to profit as the advertising company of JCPenney or Macy's. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that it is an ad auction system, what that allows is for even there's with the difference between Facebook and Google, right? Is there's multiple places that you can rank for. And so Google is only going to show one of your ads at a time, depending on how you set it up, for each placement. It's not going to show a Google page unless you're searching for JCPenney only, for example, products or inventory, then it might show you nothing but JCPenney ads. But typically, if you look for boots, it's going to show you a variety of stores to choose from when it comes to those ads. I do see with search results organically, Amazon is so big that it's gotten to where you'll see multiple organic results, for example, of a page like Amazon that is so big it can do all of that ranking, But overall, when it comes to that page, you're going to see a variety of stores. And this is because if you do nothing but show that one store, it's going to cannibalize the replacement, and you're going to get less of a chance of Google getting more money from that. You know what I'm saying? because if other people don't have the chance to rank, then Google can't charge them. So Google offers different placements. But if you're ranking on Facebook, for example, you only have one person's going to show up in that ad spot. Yeah, there's different ad spots in the feed, but at the same time, in each ad spot there's only one store to see it, one ad to see it at a time. Typically, they have to scroll to see another. Versus Google, you're going to be seeing multiple ads at once. Unless you're watching a YouTube video. Okay, I'm sorry I'm saying this way too long. Anyway, let's keep going. Organic search, or SEO. This is your long-term results. And it's going to require ongoing maintenance. Your placement is not guaranteed. And your optimization latency can make it difficult to compete. So yeah, it takes time. So yeah. And then it says, how does search behavior differ? Search has been becoming a mobile-first channel. And, I feel like whenever I was in, high school, there was a time, I remember, we always had to have homework and assignments due on the computer and things like that at home, and we'd have to print things out. And I remember, some kids being in trouble in high school because they would be like, I don't have a printer for their paper or whatever. And so the teacher would be like, everybody has a computer, and so I feel like I remember a time where computers were so popular, especially desktops. They were so popular and they were a little bit easier to get than before COVID than after COVID, in my opinion. Everybody had a desktop that I was around. I went to public schools. I grew up in a trailer park, all of that. But everybody had access to a desktop that I knew of, right? Versus nowadays, almost nobody that I know owns a desktop. People find out I have one, and they're like, holy fuck, you still have a desktop? Almost everybody that I know is own their phone instead of the computer. And from my perspective, and that's just, I guess, it's just people that I'm around, a lot of people I know now can't afford the desktops. Maybe they had access to their family desktop back in the day. And that's another thing. When I say we all had desktops in the day, all of us individuals didn't have desktop, but we would all have access to a family desktop, it would be one computer per household sometimes or some shit. But now it's we don't use laptops and computers the same way, in my opinion, colloquially. It's everybody's mobile first. And it's because I feel that poverty is increasing even more than it was 10, 20 years ago. A lot of people even more cannot afford that shit. And there's always been people who can't afford that shit. I know that, poverty's always exists. And I've known people that couldn't afford computers even when almost everyone I knew had access to a computer. But I do feel like the more time passes, the less I see people getting access to computers, because the parts for a lot of these the computer parts and the computer devices, the prices are so high, so many people can't afford them. And if something breaks, you may not be able to replace something for it. And yeah, it's sad. And then also, when you look into the history of how this technology is made and built, that's even more depressing. But yeah, okay, how did I get here? I apologize. But anyway, search has been becoming a mobile-first channel. Search query volume in the United States from 2014 to 2019. It shows desktop declining from 66.5 billion queries to 62.3. However, mobile climbs. Oh, I apologize. I don't know why I thought that was desktop. It was the percent of all searches through voice. Oh, no, those are two different things. I apologize. I was right the first time. So the desktop searches went from 66.5 to 62.3. They're showing two different things that are kind of overlaid, so I got confused. But then mobile searches have gone from 66.5 billion queries in 2014 to 141.9 billion queries in 2019. So that's a lot, right? And then below that, which is where I got confused, and then I was like, wait, am I wrong? Okay, it said percent of all searches through voice by 2020 was half of them, 50%. User experience and behavior differs by device. Desktop users, on the other hand, use broader queries. Desktop users use brand-modified, longer-tailed keyword searches 42% of the time. Desktop, leaned-in search behavior. Desktop users still earning top engagement numbers. Desktop actively peaks during working hours, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You know, that's another thing. I know a lot of people, the only access they have to a desktop is at work or school. And it says content is king for both types of device users. Users prefer researching on mobile, but completing purchases on desktop. Higher volume of site visits from mobile devices, while time spent on site is more evenly distributed. So basically they're saying people who, more people will get onto websites from mobile than they will from desktop, but either way, however they come, they're known to spend the same amount of time. User experience and behavior differs by device continued. Mobile users typically have a more specific goal in mind when searching, so their queries are more focused. It says they are for their, like, they apostrophe R-E, but it should be T-H-E-I-R, the possessive there, I think. Anyway, it says their queries are more focused. Media Post states that mobile users search brand-specific queries 50% of the time. Mobile, second screen search behavior. Mobile users are younger and more receptive. Mobile users are more open to location sharing. They're basically like, mobile users are young and don't realize they're being targeted to. Anyway, it says, but that's actually changed since then, because now you can really better control how you see ads, as well as, well, not necessarily how you see them in some cases, but you can control the data they get from you for those ads, and if that makes sense. And then it says pre-purchase research is driving mobile conversions up, such as learn more or where to buy clicks. User preference for apps versus websites is still debatable. For me personally, I prefer a website. If it's an app, it's better be a really good app, because every fucking body wants you to have a goddamn app. It's too much for me. Like, it's, Anyway. And then it says 89% of their time spent on media is through mobile apps. 11% of their time on media is spent through the mobile web. And it says men spend 29 hours and 32 minutes on the app, I think, for 2013, and 22 hours, 27 minutes in 2012. Women spent 30 hours, 58 minutes on apps in 2013, and 23 hours, 39 minutes, 2012. And then for websites, men spent 2 hours, 45 minutes in 2013, and women, and 4 hours, 8 minutes in 2012, but women spent 3 hours, 46 minutes on 2013, and 4 hours, 30 minutes in 2012. I think this makes sense, though, because we have our phones on us everywhere we go, so we can spend more time on it, but you can only spend so much time at home on your computer. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like, I don't know. Take your phone with you. Like, that makes sense to me. And then it says market share for search engines in the USA. It isn't even close. So for search engine market share between November 2018 and November 2019, it was basically showing that Google had about 88.43%, Bing had 6.21%, Yahoo had 3.67%, DuckDuckGo 1.29%, Ecosia 0.13%, and Yandex for Russia had 0.07%. So yeah. And then it says top search engines with Google dominating its competition. With a more than 90% market share in 2019, Google claims the top spot with ease. Today, more than 50% of product searches start on Amazon, not Google. In 2013, Apple decided to make Bing, rather than Google, the default search engine on its devices. DuckDuckGo had more than 16 million searches a day. By 2019, that number was up to more than 36 million. So, where it says in 2013, Apple made Bing its default, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere between now and then, I think around 2019 or 2016, I could be wrong, but if I'm not wrong, I think that Google changed that and was like, you can have more money if you make us the default in certain places, I think, if I'm not wrong, from prior trial exhibits. Anyway, and then it says, Google takes into account over 200 factors before delivering the best results to its users. 54% of all product searches are now occurring on Amazon, which now ranks as the number 3 advertising platform behind Google and Facebook. While Bing doesn't compare to Google, it's an example of an engine that managed to accelerate its market share through collaborations and partnerships. In 2014, Apple made DuckDuckGo a search option for its iOS and Safari. Mozilla also updated its internet browser to include DuckDuckGo. And then it shows top 10 global search engines, and it shows the search engine and the market share. So it shows Google at 76%, Baidu 15%, Bing has 4%, Yahoo has 2%, Yandex 0.6%, Ask 0.2%, DuckDuckGo 0.1%, Naver 0.1%, AOL 0.04%, and Dogpile, I don't even know what the fuck Dogpile is, 0.03%. And it looks like that's from 2019. And then it's saying, how does paid search work? Paid search 101, how does it work? So, how does search work? You just type in some keywords into the search bar and Google shows you the ads you needed to see, right? And it has like a picture of Michael Scott pointing at you, and then it's got like Dwight behind him yelling. And it says, like most things with search, while the question is simple, the answer is not. Because search is a completely market-dependent channel driven by demand, that is, searches, real-time auctions, along with campaign architecture and structure, will dictate when an ad is delivered. Real-time auction mechanics determine which ads will be shown on the search engine results page. So it shows for the first step here, it shows a search query of buy cool pants, and it says every time a user enters a search, all of the keywords within their query will enter a real-time auction. Step 2, enters real-time auction. The algorithm will determine which brands are bidding on variations of buy cool pants, for example, allowing the auction to determine which result is best. Step 3, search engine result page shows most relevant ad. Multiple factors taken into consideration before awarding a paid placement. Did I say played? Before awarding a paid placement. Algorithms ultimately look to reward relevancy. And then it shows, for example, with cool pants. And again, it looks like Hulu was putting this together because it shows like a Hulu, it was labeled a Hulu exhibit and it shows the Hulu logo on all of the pages and everything. So then it says, how are ads delivered against searches? Ensuring ad relevance for queries often boils down to campaign structure and organization of keywords, which in turn helps to ensure ad delivery on the search engine's result page. Step 1. The user enters the query, such as best streaming service. Step 2. This enters the real-time auction, and then you have, for example, Hulu, Apple TV, Netflix, Disney, etc. show up. Step 3. Search engine result page shows the most relevant ad, and then it shows you, for example, campaign number 1, and it shows you ad group B, keywords related to B, and ads related to B, and it shows you like different campaigns with ad group A, B, or C, you know, for example. And it says, as long as the selected ad group contains only the streaming service related keywords and ads, when a user's query matches against an active keyword, a corresponding ad within that ad group will be served. So yeah. Basically, they're saying in order for an ad to show up for a keyword, the ad data that was entered into it has to match the word that was entered, basically. Or a variation of it. So it says, how are ads delivered against searches? Before looking at actual ads, we must first look at keywords and match types, since search ads are only delivered if the user search query triggers keywords being actively bid on. And speaking of match types, I keep speaking on this. The chief marketing officer for that law firm I have been bitching about a lot was trying to convince me that match types don't fucking matter. And I know they do. Oh my god, I'm still mad about that shit because I don't like, just admit, like, it's one thing, right, if you have a different experience with using something, and so that's your experience with it, and so you were sharing, oh, this is my experience with it, and so this is why I don't think that broader phrase match matters, right? That I wouldn't judge or I wouldn't be bitching about, because I would appreciate and support that understanding of her process, right? But it was where she was trying to act like, oh, you just don't know what you're talking about. I was like, bitch. So then I didn't even feel like arguing about it. So I was like, yeah, I must not have, been doing it enough. So it must have been too long since I last ran ads or something. I don't know. But in my head, I was like, okay. Anyway, so every time, like, in these trial exhibits where I'm seeing all of these documents speaking about the importance, though, of the broad and the phrase matching and the everything like that, I'm like, anyway. So, it says, before looking at ads, I think I just read this, but we're going back to it. Before looking at actual ads, we must first look at keywords and match types, since search ads are only delivered if the user's search query triggers keywords being actively bid on. And so it shows how it shows a spectrum between precision and scale, as well as efficiency and cost. So typically, which I find interesting with how they chose efficiency and cost here, right? Because you can argue with that, right? Like, so for example, on one level, sometimes high intent keywords can be more expensive than a general awareness keyword. But at the same time, if your ad budget is focused on awareness instead of high intent, you can spend more money trying to acquire someone at the top of funnel than you would if you were to get them at the bottom. So that one, you can argue up and down on it, I think, depending on what's happening. But anyway, so for match type, it shows broad match modified. Description. This contains the modified term or closer variants, but not synonyms in any order. So, for free TV shows, it'll show you where to find free TV shows to watch. It'll show you free shows, and it'll show you shows on TV that are free to watch. For phrase match, this is a phrase and close variants of that phrase. So for free TV shows, and so I forgot to mention, this is relevant to how it's entered. So for a broad match, you would enter that with a plus sign. So those keywords have plus free, plus TV, plus shows. That's how it would be entered in the ad setup. So for the keyword in quotation marks for the phrase match, free TV shows, how to watch free TV shows would show up, watch free TV shows would show up, and stream free TV shows would show up, because any search result with that phrase would come in that example. Versus broad match, it could be anything about free TV shows, if that makes sense. But phrase match has to include the phrase. Yeah. And then exact match, it has to be those exact words in that exact order, or a close enough variant. So for the exact match of free TV shows, either free TV shows or free shows would work. TV shows would probably also work too, depending on the ability. It depends, because TV shows is actually kind of vague. But it might work, right? So anyway, and then it shows the building blocks of a search campaign. The landing page will often provide direction in what types of keywords to bid on, as well as verbiage for proposed ad copy. For campaign building blocks, keywords are lifted from language on the brand's website and landing page, and will also help to inform synonyms, alternatives, misspellings, tail terms, and questions. For what do search ads look like? Search text ads must adhere to strict character limitations and specs. So, there are character limits for the headlines and the descriptions and the URL path. The URL path is not guaranteed to be displayed. And are also, if there's ad extensions, those are a feature that shows extra business information with your ad, like an address, phone number, store rating, or more web page links. The location extensions, call out extensions, structured snippets, site link, message extensions, prices, and apps are all examples. So the site link extensions, those take people to specific pages on your site, and the benefits can include a higher expected click-through rate. It helps improve your quality score, an increased search engine result page real estate, you're taking up more space, multiple conversion paths, and you can deep link to multiple landing pages. So site link extension, right? For Hulu, example, it shows you could try 30 days free, starting at $5.99 a month. So for some people, $5.99, that's really cheap. That might be what gets them. But for other people, it might be like, oh, a month free. Hey, let me fuck it, So they have two different options, so that way it might entice somebody, more chances of conversion, and things like that. And then it says search ads have evolved beyond just text with mobile-specific video and gallery ads. So video and gallery ads. Application. You can leverage visually engaging ads to grab users' attention while searching relevant terms, with video ads allowing the ability to leverage TVC spots or trailers posted on YouTube, while gallery ads allow for a dynamic, scrollable carousel of images for visual storytelling on the search engine result page. As a traditionally text-heavy channel, the ability to serve relevant ad types focused on visual engagement allows for Hulu original content to maintain a stronger share of mind by owning more digital real estate for mobile Google searches. So short term, things like these really do matter for each new campaign you're doing to launch new campaigns with the most up-to-date techniques and to understand how the specifications for these placements in terms of how it's going to show up for the user, how can the user swipe through it, what will it look like for them visually, things like that. Being able to make your content a visual experience for them does matter. But long term, knowing about carousels and videos and all of that, like the different ways that these are changing on Facebook and Google, keeping up with all of that isn't as important as knowing the basics of marketing and knowing how to set the ad up on the back end in the account so that you are targeting people correctly and making money. Those are the things that you want to make sure you have a grasp on first, and then you can get into the details and the nuances with the creative and really utilize those creative placements to scale in a good way. But if you're just trying to spend a bunch of money on high quality video graphic production, without understanding how to set up an ad account, you can spend a lot of money on making an ad without making any money back. So that's what I was saying. Anyway, let's keep going. It says, when do we get charged? Search ads are charged per click, and the amount per click is determined by a second price auction that occurs in real time. So your impressions are free, and the clicks incur a charge because it's pay per click. So if people just look at your ad, it doesn't cost you. You're only charged by the people who visit your site. Well, I would say click on the ad, because some people will click on the ad and then bounce back. They don't really visit if they decide if it was a mistake or they decide they didn't want to go for some reason, But yeah. It says, how is the cost per click determined in auction? So the second price auction weighs and gives preference to the brand being promoted through the use of ad rank minus the numerical score of your bid times the quality score within auctions. So ad rank components include your budget, the keyword bid, and your quality score. Okay, I'm realizing that wasn't a minus sign. That was probably like a dash. I don't know. He knows. But anyway, so it shows different advertisers. It shows their max bid, the quality score of their ad, and the format impact and the ad rank. So Bob had a max bid of $4, but he had a low quality score and format impact was low, and so his ad wasn't shown. Even though he bid more money than everybody else, his ad was so bad they were like, nah, we're not even showing that. You know what I mean? And then the person that was shown first, they only bid $2, but they had a very high score and high impact, and so they got the first placement. The person who bid second, they bid $3, they bid more, but their format was low, even though they had a pretty high score. For the format impact of the third placement, they had a medium score, they only bid $1. So yeah. So, what is a bid and quality score? Bids are the maximum amount you're willing to spend per click for a given keyword. I think where people go wrong with ads is they don't bid based on what's going to give them good return on ad spend. And whether or not, so you can run ads bidding one or two ways, either for immediate return on ad spend or long-term customer lifetime value related to the average order value. One of those two ways, and it could be a different metric, but in terms of like those ideas, right? So you're either immediate or long term is where you are targeting for your bid in terms of how much money you're going to get back. So you want to make sure that you're going to be getting a 4-to-1 return on ad spend. If not today, tomorrow. So when you're bidding on your target return on ad spend, you're bidding for immediate return on ad spend. When you're bidding for lifetime value, you're bidding on the long-term value you're going to get out of the customer. Whichever way you choose to go is fine, as long as you know how you're bidding and why you're bidding in order to maintain profitability. Where I see people go wrong, 99% of the time, everything else about their ad will be fine. But you know what the fuck they did? They're running an ad where they're telling Google, hey, let me spend $100. I'm gonna exaggerate heavily, but they'll be like, I will spend $100 per click. But yet their keyword or yet their offer is they're like, let me spend $100 per click. You know what I'm saying? By bidding on keywords that are really expensive. For example, in the legal industry, sometimes, depending, you can pay that much for leads, actual leads, right? Or in the financing industry, or in high luxury, or in marketing contracts. When we're talking about securing those bigger deals, you can spend $100 on a lead, right? Sometimes. And if it's a qualified good lead who's going to buy, for example, you're selling a $45,000 offer and you are able to sell that for $100, that's amazing, right? So sometimes it works out, right, where you're spending a lot up front. But if you are spending $100 on a keyword and your offer is only $10, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? That's where I see people go wrong. People are spending so much money on ads and they don't need to be. So, that's they'll have everything else right, but they're not doing the finances right. Imagine going and putting it's like having a credit card with a limit of $5,000, yet you only make $1,000 a month. And imagine putting $5,000 in debt, but you only make $1,000 and you can't pay it off. That's how people treat their ads, And they think, oh, I'll make sales so I can spend a bunch of money I don't have up front on the ad if I'm going to make sales on the back end. And then it doesn't work out that way because I didn't set it up right. So yeah, anyway, okay, sorry for that rant. Let's keep going. It says, so for bids, that's the maximum amount you're willing to spend per click for a given keyword. Your quality score, this measures a campaign's effectiveness with a higher quality score resulting in greater cost efficiency and higher positions. For relevancy, are your keywords and ad copy aligned? For your match search bid, are you bidding competitively in comparison to other competitors in market? For click-through rate, are you providing a good user experience that results in ad engagement? For landing page, does your landing page content reflect the keyword and ad copy? And so yeah, and then it says thank you. So that was the last of this presentation. So basically this kind of is a Hulu presentation. It goes into a deep dive on search engine marketing and how you get found online and how you can get found not only organically, but it also focuses more, even more so on getting found online via paid search. How does the ad algorithm, ad auction system place you in the algorithm? And how does the matching of the terms connect you to specific results. It shows all of that, and it also showed the market share and the market dominance that Google has on search. So I think all of this is why it kind of got entered into evidence, because it not only explained how it worked to help people process it, process how Google was able to take money from advertisers, but it also, in order to provide results, so people keep spending their money with Google, right? And so how it can outperform these competitors through this ad system that they're not able to compete with because it spends so much time. So yeah. Next up, let's go over a new presentation. We're going to do one more, and then I'm going to wrap this up. This thing has taken way longer than I thought it would. So yeah, we got exhibit UPX0452. When I saw that was 30 fucking slides, so I was like, yeah, no, we're going to be here all day. So this is another email from Hal Varian of Google to David Stallibras of Fingleton? I don't know. It's a reply about passing along ad prices. And this is from September 9th, 2020, and it was filed September 27th, 2023. All right. This is the last thing we're going to do today. So, this is from Hal to David. John Fingleton and Fabian Curto Millet are both CC'd. And it's about passing along ad prices. So Hal had said, my concern is with quote unquote market, which I usually think involves financial transactions of some sort. There's no such market for search, though there is a market for search advertising, of course. If you look at radio station mergers in the United States, all of them define the market as the advertising market, not the content market. This chart is interesting, as it shows that most people arrive at shopping sites via direct navigation. Overall, search ads are only 8% of the total. There are other related numbers. 94% of clicks are organic, 6% are ad. Google advertisers get 5 times as many organic clicks as ad clicks on average. Which I think that's interesting because the prior documentation that we had looked over from Hulu, they were showing how people were more likely to get their ads clicked than to have their organic search result clicked. If I understood that correctly. But here, Google is in their own document is saying that for search, most of the clicks are organic and only 6% are ad back in 2020. I wonder if that's the same still today. But anyway, those are also about, I guess, different concepts, right? Because the first thing we were looking at was more focused on advertising analytics versus this one is focused on all of search, I guess, maybe. But before that, Hal had written, the European Union find that specialist search is a complement. Oh, and there's something else here, but it's redacted. So it says the European Union find that specialist search is a complement, not substitute for general search. They support this by noting that most specialist searches are preceded by general searches. So they're saying, a lot of times people go to a specialist search when they couldn't find what they were looking for from a general one. By that logic, kissing is a substitute for intercourse. Damn. Oh, would you really call that? I mean, I guess I can see what they're saying, but so before that, David had put on market power what the CMA says. The CMA never formally defines a market. They refer to the European Union shopping case, which finds a market for general search due to limited demand-side substitution. Okay, so they're also citing elements of their report. I'm going to skip that because fuck that. But so they're talking about the main report, and then they're talking about the infringement decision. And then it says the European Union find that specialist search is a complement, not substitute for general search. They support this by noting that most specialist searches are preceded by general searches. The CMA found similar results for Money Supermarket and UK CSS services, who also receive significant traffic from general search. The CMA also looked at Amazon, but were swayed by Amazon's argument that they can't be horizontal competitors given how much money Amazon spends on Google ads. The CMA also noted that retail search ads are less than 20% of total search revenue. They concluded that specialized search providers provide only a limited competitive constraint to Google search on the consumer side of the platform. In essence, they define market power by extension. Google wins auctions to be the default general search provider. Google wins consumers from other general search providers, and Google makes a lot of money. Oh, now I see why that guy is arguing it, because in here they're showing how they're kind of admitting through this, in my opinion, through this documentation, through acknowledging it, in my opinion, they're discussing how other people have said that they define market power by extension, where Google is utilizing auctions to be a default search provider, and that they are getting consumers from other search providers, which is true because, for example, Bing results and Google results sometimes. Bing is its own search engine, right? But sometimes you can get certain results from Google. How it ranks on Google is going to affect how it ranks on Bing. We'll get more into that another time. But anyway, it says, what I think. I have sympathy with not wanting to define a market. It's drawing a bright binary line, which doesn't really exist. Having said that, there are a number of places where general search is a clear product, such as default search bars. Google wins most all auctions to be initial default. Google also wins in the market share where defaults are changed by the user, either in app or through replacing Edge with Chrome, etc. The user may have a range of intents where they interact with the product, but I think it is reasonable to consider general search as a well-defined focal product in these instances. Once you've defined general search as a focal product, it's relatively easy to conclude that Google has market power in it. So before, where I was basically looking at Hal was basically saying kissing is a substitute for fucking, by the logic of if you think that specialist search is a complement and not a substitute for general search. I didn't kind of get that, right? Because I was like, why would you argue again? Like, because how does that make sense? But in reality, I think what it is because in all this documentation that we've been seeing, Google has been actively trying to distance themselves from anything in writing where it could look like that they are monopolizing a situation. So I think that Hal is just trying to dismiss it in writing. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just trying to dismiss it in writing as if he doesn't agree with it, because if Google were to accept that in writing, they would be admitting in writing as a team how they're monopolizing the market, right? But say, you know, what I don't get is, for me, kissing is a part of sex, right? Unless you are having sex with someone that you don't feel connected to, you don't want to fucking kiss them. But then why would fuck you? You don't want to fuck them. But whatever, that's just me. But like, right, so I don't understand how for him saying kissing is a substitute for intercourse would be actually arguing against it, an effective argument. Because where he says by that logic, that makes me feel like he's dismissing it or arguing against it, right? But then kissing is a substitute for intercourse. It's not a substitute for intercourse, it's part of intercourse. But that's not, if they were saying that specialist search is a substitute for general search, then I would understand this line. But because they're saying that specialist search is a complement, or rather adjacent to, and it could be part of, not a substitute, then I don't understand, because, you know what I mean? Because kissing is a complement for intercourse. The same way that specialist search is a complement for general search, in my opinion. So I think that's why that tripped me up. But anyway, I'm sorry. All right, let's keep going back. Where the fuck were we? I don't know. But I think we were here. It says, while an alternative frame of analysis might focus on user intent to define markets, the search term, rather than the search product characteristics, I suspect that boat has sailed. And so before all of that, Hal had said, back to the CMA issue. What does the CMA mean by market power in search? I understand what it means to have a market power in online advertising, because you might consider online advertising to be a market. I don't, but I can see why some people say that. But market power in search? What does that mean? Search for products? Search for hotels? Search for Socrates orations? Search for rock bands? With all these searches having zero cost to users, what does market power mean in this context? So market power means your ability to control the market, dude. What the fuck you mean in this context? Doesn't matter which, it means any fucking market. There is a market for search. Are you trying to claim there is no market for search? I think the argumentation in this one comes from Hal trying to distance in email and through the corporate ideology that this isn't a monopoly, you know what I mean? I think that's where that is. Because what? Anyway. And then before that, Hal had written, thinking a little more about the VC industry in the UK. You should talk to Patrick Pichette, who was Google's CFO for many years and is now a VC in London. He specializes in the European Union, UK, Canada, geos, and knows a lot about what works and what doesn't. Another point, fully half of venture-funded firms expect to be acquired rather than go through an IPO. If the antitrust authorities here make it harder for acquisitions, you're going to see less entry by VCs. I'm having a hard time reading today. Exactly contrary to what you want. So I would say be extremely cautious about large firms acquiring small ones. It's large firms acquiring large ones where the antitrust authorities should focus. I am assuming that we are not accessing all of the email communication because we are only seeing what is filed with the court. But the snapshots of what we're seeing filed with the court is kind of entertaining to me because it looks like Hal is just like manically emailing all of these people. Kind of, I do that, so I'm not judging. I'm entertained by it, but I'm not judging. But it looks like he's just kind of like emailing all these fucking people about his, like, we are not a monopoly. Don't forget we're not a monopoly, and by the way, we're not a monopoly, in my opinion. That's how it kind of looks to me in hindsight. But I don't know if I'm wrong for thinking that. But anyway, so before that, Hal had written, "Hi, John. I have attached some notes I jotted down and a more finished piece from Brattle. See my inline notes below." And before that, John, okay, so now it's from somebody else. John had wrote to Hal. "Hal, excuse me jumping back into the conversation, but could I ask a question? Are you aware of any good research that addresses evidence of an ex ante incentives to invest and ex post success? There's a lot of work on the venture capital industry. See the Hall Woodward links in my note. The VC industry in the United States works on a portfolio basis, and 70% of startups fail. So, if 70% of your investments return zero or at a nominal amount, then you have to do really well on a few investments to get a reasonable risk-adjusted return. I ask because an important angle into this debate could be to try to influence those politicians, of whom there are many in the UK, who are very committed to growing innovation, which I see up close as I happen to chair the governing council of Innovate UK, which is a bit like DARPA. I don't know what the fuck that is. For example, the UK gives huge tax breakers to people who exit their companies at a personal level. Yes, there are some good tax breaks here as well. Most startups are funded by convertible loans. If the company fails, you get to deduct your investment as a short-term loss. But if it succeeds, you can convert the note to stock and take long-term capital gains. What a deal! If competition people think that successful businesses can only earn competitive returns, then that does not leave a lot of overall return to innovation. I think that one of the Hall Woodward papers tries to estimate the returns in venture capital. I realize that there are limits to this line of argument, but one of the benefits might be that there is a large cluster of would-be innovators that might be concerned with a competition policy that means success results in taxation of that. In terms of research, what would be brilliant is any evidence of a policy shock that was shown to reduce innovation levels at an economy-wide level. I expect that may be asking too much. The US must be doing something right in this area. See below. By the way, why did the UK let Dyson trundle off to Singapore? That seems like a loss to me. And something else here seems to be redacted, I think. And then before that, Hal had written, it looks like Hal forwarded another email from David. And David Stallibras had said, "Hal, Fabian, the difficulty with engaging with the CMA report is that it is, as my former Fingleton colleague Sam Bowman says, broad as an ocean and shallow as a puddle. But it's already being picked up and recycled in the US and Australian. So 3 thoughts below on some ways to respond to the Google market power in search. Higher prices for goods and services argument, building on your comments." So like I said, they're basically brainstorming ways to argue that they're not a monopoly because people are saying that they're basically being a monopoly. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it is what we thought it was. Anyway, so they're saying, number 1, it's hard to defend high profits, and I think it's an elephant trap to try. The base of most concerns with Google is that you have strong prima facie market power in search. that you may make a very large amount of profit and that these are linked. Okay, so, and then before in the documentation, Hal was basically like, well, technically running ads on search is separate than the actual search, so we're not actually monetizing search, we have search ads. Are you fucking kidding me? Anyway, that's what I got from this documentation, but we're gonna keep going. It says, you can argue that you don't have market power in search, but it's going to be extremely difficult to win that argument until you stop making large amounts of money. You can argue that the amount of money you make is somehow fair. The investors need the returns or something, but that's going to be something of an uphill battle, to say the least. This leaves competition agencies with the question of how those rents would be returned if you did not have market power, which, again, I suspect is a question that Google doesn't want to get into. So I think there's quite a large part of the debate that, in effect, you need to cede in order to find some ground where you can get traction. While it might be necessary for legal reasons to dispute issues such as market power in search, I think doing so to a non-legal audience risks reducing the credibility of your more reasonable arguments. So they're basically saying, yeah, legally, you need to not admit that you're monopolizing, but if you don't admit, yeah, you've been monopolizing, people will think you're full of shit, because you are. Isn't that funny? It is for me. Anyway. It says, I agree with the point that defending Google's profits is difficult, but I'm going to try anyway. 1. Google is profitable because it lowered the price of ads and increased ad effectiveness. The lie detector test showed that was a lie. Google has literally admitted that they do their best to increase the profits. Essentially, we built a better and a cheaper mousetrap, but the evidence shows that's not true. Number 2, if you look at Google's revenue per user, it is on the order of 130 billion, over 2 billion, about 65 per year. I feel like this one is just going to take way too much, like this, they're not giving enough information to verify the accuracy of this, because what do you mean Google's revenue per user? Per what type of user? Are you talking about per person engaged, per each individual user of Google? How much money you make off of them existing in the space? Or are you talking about the users of your search or search ads platforms? You know what I'm saying? So that one, because if it's about the individual person, right? They're saying they only make about $65 off of each person. But it's a free service, right? Unless they buy other things. But that's different than search. Using search is free itself. So, if $65 over 0, that doesn't, trying to be like, well, we only made $65 off of each individual in a year. Reducing the amount to the individuals per year, that if it's that, you know what I'm saying, does not take away from nor negate the arguments of how you monopolize the market through the search ads revenue through the default placements. And if they're trying to say it's the second thing where it's they only make $65 off of each buyer of their ad platform, I don't believe that based on the amount of money I've spent on that bitch alone. Like, what? Where are you spending your money, Google? Anyway, and yeah, because that's revenue, not profit. So therefore, what the fuck? No, I know that's not true then. So they must mean the first thing, right? But that still doesn't negate. So, you know. And then number 3, Google's median advertiser in the UK, according to the CMA, spends around £200 to £300 per year. It used to be that global advertising was only for big multinationals. Google has made global advertising available to everyone. So it is true that before Google existed, the only ways to run multinational campaigns was to have a lot more money and things like that. And so it is true that Google does allow a cheaper alternative for international and multinational marketing campaigns that wouldn't be possible before. However, just like I said before, that doesn't negate. In fact, I think it actually supports how they use search ad revenue to monopolize market, in my opinion. I think I have to sneeze. I can't look at some light or some shit. And then it says number 4. Most of our ads are single ads on the page. It says quote unquote undersold auctions. I wouldn't say that's true anymore, but most of our revenue comes from fully sold auctions. Or maybe it is true and I'm just not aware, but I don't think I've ever seen only one ad on a page. It says if you're only seller of a product, you get a fantastic deal. I mean, in today's society, though, you have to basically be the inventor of a product to be the only seller of it. And even then, you won't be the only seller of it for long, because as soon as somebody else can copy or reproduce the same or a similar thing to sell it for cheaper, they will. And then it says, this is where I think your narrative on how Google does not unfairly extract the benefits of increased advertising efficiency is important. Rather than defend the absolute scale of Google profitability, it may work better to defend the relative benefit to Google of the various innovations that Google serves, or acts as gatekeeper to, compared to other stakeholders. So basically they're saying, we can't deny what we're being accused of, so let's try to distract them with how great we are. Having said this, as you say, the auction mechanism extracts a lot of the value of a search ad, regardless of your market power. So it may be hard to show that advertisers are really benefiting that much from the ad side of the product, rather than the organic side. The auction only extracts value if there are a lot of sellers. In the case where there are only a few sellers, the advertisers do very well in terms of surplus. If you assume rational bidding, the attached BOE note shows that advertisers are getting a lot of surplus. Experiments also show very high return on ad spend. Like I said, it's a better mousetrap. 2. Clearly distinguish in your response between product listing ads and other search ads. As you point out, much of the evidence that the CMA cites leads normal search ads with product listing ads and other specialized ads, but the concerns for each differ significantly. I mean, Google's argument that different ads perform in different ways, in my opinion, doesn't negate whether or not it is or isn't a monopoly, but that's just my opinion. And then it says, I think it would be helpful to unpick the key charts in Appendix C, don't know what the fuck they're talking about, to separate normal search ads from the product listing ads or specialized ads. I think it would then be helpful to double down on the argument that product listing ads and specialized ads are a consumer benefit, showing as much of the internal documentation as possible. You can then deal with the remaining non-specialized ads separately. And I said, I think that's a good idea. The great thing about product listing ads is that the shopper gets to choose whether or not they want to see more ads. As an aside, I don't think the evidence that Bing has a lower market share but more adverts is quite the magic bullet that we would like. As I understand it, the CMA basically think the market for search is broken such that Bing can only win customers by paying for defaults and then keeping inert customers who don't switch. If the market worked, consumers would more actively choose between Bing and Google, and Bing would see different incentives on quality. I know this sounds really weird, but it's the strong impression I got from a couple of chats with CMA and BEIS economists, and consistent with paragraph 106. Of course, Bing is the default search engine in the Edge browser, which is installed in every desktop PC shipped. So it's Google that is paying for preloading Chrome. Basically, the Bing users are already ad blind, so the ad load isn't really a big deal to them. Bing, Yahoo, MySpace all had or have the same problem: excessive focus on short-term revenue. See this great article about MySpace. Again, it's got something redacted here. Wait, what year is this from? I thought it said 2020. It did say 2020. Is MySpace even relevant for 2020? Damn. Number 3. And it had something else here, but it looked redacted, but whatever. It says number 3, take it to the detail on the particular concerns of adverts for financial and consumer services and related comparison sites. The concern I have heard from both the CMA and BEIS relates not to product comparison sites, but to financial and consumer services, such as gas, electricity, telecoms, comparison sites. Examples include Money Supermarket and GoCompare. They are considered important to consumer outcomes in the markets they serve. They do not engage in the product carousel, but buy standard search ads for relatively standard search terms. They aren't next tag. What is curious is why Money Supermarket is so successful in the UK, but there is no comparable site in the US. I don't even know what the fuck that shit is, to be honest. It said, I think that their saturation ad campaign, when the first started, allowed them to build a brand, not just a search result. I don't think I said this right, but also I don't think it's worded right. Maybe both. Then it said Netflix and eBay had a similar strategy. So I think the CMA's concerns can first be addressed by establishing that there is no link between Google market power on the consumer side of search and the cost to these services of onboarding leads from Google, either per lead or in total. This would involve disputing the various transmission mechanisms set out in Appendix Q. I would be willing to bet that AdWords would have a lower cost per acquisition than TV. The problem is that the marketing folks still have a TV mentality and are fundamentally innumerate. Unfortunately, this may still leave the conclusion that the auction mechanism does extract a lot of the value of the advert to the advertiser, independent of market power on the other side of the market. It may be that Google can live with this. After all, this is now no longer a matter of abuse of market power. Oh my god, hold on, let's process. So basically, they're basically saying there's no link between Google market power on the consumer side of search and the cost to these services. Oh my god. So basically they're saying that because Google does nothing to control how users interact with them, they're not a monopoly. But the truth is, because Google has used revenue share agreements and mobile application distribution agreements to be the default placement in exchange for revenue, they are controlling user search behavior by making themselves the default. So like, it's really funny because while trying to argue that they're not a monopoly, if you already know what they've done, then you're kind of seeing where they're just making shit up because they've already kind of shown that they are a monopoly in this way, but they're trying to be devil's advocates about it. You know what I mean? Like, instead of looking, they're like, ignore the reality and the evidence of what happened and listen to what I theorize instead. You know what I mean? It's It's like if I tell you, ignore who I am and listen to me when I tell you I'm the Queen of England. And everybody was like, oh, hell the Queen. That's how people treat Google. Anyway, okay, so, and then it says, but it is a great model where the new entrant, oh, did I fuck up the caption? No, I don't think I did. Sorry. I thought I fucked up the captioner for a second. Anyway, it says, but it's a great model where the new entrant with a novel business with a few direct competitors pays a lower price than the large incumbent. Take a look at Pinterest or Zoom. But I think it may be good to engage with the detail on how much the adverts cost, what the conversion rate is, and what the business models are of the relevant firms. Comparison site, the consumer financial service provider, to show, if possible, that the impact of ad prices on final consumer prices for the services will be negligible. I definitely agree, but I think that any of the hundreds of small online marketing consultants can do this most effectively. As I recall, the CMA did not, what I say did not, the CMA did talk to some of these folks. Thanks again for the stimulating conversation. Happy to discuss on a hangout. D. I find that entertaining because he's basically like, yeah, we all know that we're a monopoly, but for argument's sake and legal liability, let's pretend that we're not a monopoly. Thanks for stimulating me. What? That was stimulating for sure. Anyway. Oh, and then it says, P.S. As background, this question of ad price pass-through has been a hobby horse of mine for a while. I drafted another blog post about this exact issue the day after the report was published, but it was too angry and snarky and was therefore not, I thought, helpful to Google. So I left it as a rant. You can read it here, complete with references to late 90s UK shock jocks that Fabian may get. Fabian, Anna. But I think it's really funny because these people are more angry at the idea of being called a monopoly than about the fact that they are acting as one. Similar to how white people get more mad if you call them a racist than the fact that racism exists. And then David had written before that, Hal, if it helps, I'll try this evening to pull together your suggestions in a way that might work, with the more detailed-oriented types at the CMA or BEIS. Of course, as you suggested at first, there's also the broader stroked political arguments going on that we need to hit. D. And so they are calling, so these are arguments that are related to how they're using ads to dominate the market. And he's calling that political. Isn't that interesting? Every time someone says don't make it political, it's usually when they don't want to take accountability for something. And so the fact that they're like, yeah, I know we're being accused of being a monopoly, but those are just political arguments. What? Anyway. And before that, Hal had written, Nextag's CEO, Jeffrey Katz, summarized this business model in his testimony to the U.S. Senate. Quote, we estimate that under 10% of our shoppers remember us when asked, and that is precisely because we are among the world's experts in how to use Google as a marketplace. For example, so right here, I don't think this helps them because they were trying to argue that they were not a marketplace, but here they are citing a quote claim in their marketplace. But anyway, it says, for example, we are a very large Google search advertiser. We manage and bid on hundreds of millions of Google search keywords using very sophisticated software. What we do, very few companies can replicate. Unless that, I mean, I guess that quote could be how that argument came about, or they were trying to say that they are not a monopoly because, or they are not a marketplace. Maybe that this quote is why they said that. But I mean, yeah, they are though. So anyway. And it says, see also this, and a link that we don't get to access. And before that, Hal had written, their case in point is price comparison sites, PCSs, for services such as insurance and mortgages and electricity, money, supermarket, go compare, etc. Oh, that's what that is. Let's look at price comparison sites, known in Europe as CSS. Cost comparison? I don't know. Or comparison something? Service site? I don't know. They said they get their product feed from merchants. Originally, there were a few different formats for uploading prices and product descriptions, but they've converged to a single format. Once a merchant creates the data feed for Google Merchant Center, that same data feed can be uploaded to any online CSS. Over the last few years, there have been over 300 price comparison sites created in Europe, with an average of about 20 to 30 per year. This is an industry with very low entry costs. The major cost is letting users know you exist, which is why they rely on advertising. This is why Nextag got 65% of its traffic from Google, and then complained that it wasn't enough. You could, but that does. I feel like that's wrong though, because you could have like 4 out of 10, or 4 out of 9, or 4 like that's wrong. You could have like 6 out of 9. How about that? You could have like 6 out of 9 people come from Google, but if it's only 6 people, that's still low amount of traffic. So you know what I mean? The percentages, that doesn't mean shit to me. But anyway, and it could be like 60% or something. So before that, Hal had written, the CMA's main practical transmission mechanism for this seems to be that Google has increased advertising prices by degrading the user experience through the substitution of organic results for paid results, especially for navigational queries, but also through product universals, relitigating search. There is a commonly held view that ads are inferior to organic for search users. But if the searcher is looking to buy a product, the ads, particularly the product listing ads, are far superior for the searcher. So what you want to do is have ads that the user can expand if they are shopping, or if they are doing something else where ads are not relevant. This is the role of the ad carousel, which has been a big win. WRT ads note that Google chooses the creative for the organic ads, but the advertiser chooses the creative for the ad. This is a big plus from the advertiser point of view, since the advertiser can supplement or repeat the message in the organic result. And then it shows Macy's ad organic link, but either they redacted that or it just didn't load right when they printed it. I don't know. But I think they've been redacting it, which is why I've been saying redacted. But in hindsight, maybe that was like the image didn't load when they saved it thing. I don't know. So before that, Hal had said, never mind, I found the CMA reference. I attached some comments on the relevant pages. Thanks again for describing the CMA point of view. Before that, Hal said, David, thanks for your insights into how the CMA views things. Here are some comments about how we might respond. Before that, David said, how? I think the fact that total advertising spend has not changed, despite the significant increase in the technological efficiency of advertising brought about by targeting, is a point in their favor. It is consistent with the theory that Google has appropriated the surplus created by the possibility of targeted advertising over the internet. If by appropriated, they mean that all the benefits of search have accrued to Google, it is clear that they are wrong, since both users and advertisers use Google search. It is widely documented that most visitors to most commercial websites come from organic clicks. And then it says sees this chart, but either that didn't load right for us or it's redacted, or I don't know. And then it says, or this study, and it shows a link. But our own internal studies of our 100,000 largest advertisers show they get 5 to 7 times as many organic clicks as ad clicks. The CMA concern is particularly where firms are in relatively undifferentiated oligopolistic, I don't think I said that right, oligopolistic, yeah, probably not, competition with each other and get much of their traffic through users. Why did I say through users? Much of their traffic through search. Their case in point is price comparison sites, PCSs, for services such as insurance and mortgages and electricity, Money Supermarket, Go Compare, etc. I think that most of the top sites get most of their visitors via direct navigation. It depends on your brand strength, of course. I don't recall seeing a comparison between organic and ad clicks by the CMA, even though they had the data to do this. Perhaps they did a comparison and decided not to report it? These sites are considered important for enhancing competition and consumer engagement in their relevant downstream markets. They have featured prominently in recent market studies and investigations into energy and banking, for example, which is why I think the theory has relatively strong support and the complainants find a sympathetic ear. I think the CMA argument is superficially attractive. Google has market power in search. Probably true. They even admit here it's probably true, I think. So it says, one metric to look at is the fraction of clicks and or revenue where at least one advertiser is paying the reserve price. It turns out that this is a small fraction of our revenue. As economic theory would predict, most of the revenue comes from fully sold auctions where it is competition that sets prices, not the reserve price. Market power enables a firm to extract rents through PQR. Ooh, I just burped. Through PQRS. True. I don't even know what the fuck PQRS is, to be honest. And then it says, is that a definition? Price comparison services spend a lot of money on Google search ads such, and any profitability that is undifferentiated from their competitors will be largely lost in escalating bids for search leads. Probably true. This sounds a lot like double marginalization. Booking.com is charging hotels, and Google is charging Booking.com. So the remedy is for Google to acquire Booking.com. Just kidding, of course. Reducing Google market power in search would reduce the amount that PCSs paid for their leads. Intuitively attractive, but in my opinion, false, primarily due to two-sided market. Is their view that Google is artificially restricting the number of ads shown? So the remedy is for Google to show more ads? Of course, there is also the question of what price? Cost per click? Cost per impression? Cost per acquisition or cost per action? Okay, so I see some people use CPA for cost per action only. Sometimes I'll see people use CPA and they mean cost per acquisition. And then usually people will put CAC, C-A-C, for cost per acquisition. But we're just going to go with cost per action for CPA here. So cost per action is the only meaningful price, and the CMA report says little about it. The CMA's main practical transmission mechanism for this seems to be that Google has increased advertising prices by degrading the user experience through the substitution of organic results for paid results, especially for navigational queries, but also through product universals, relitigating search. But Google has reduced the maximum number of ads shown It used to be 8, now it is 4, and only a small fraction of queries, a few percent, get the 4 ads. We are making increasing use of carousels, which are great from the user point of view. Those who want to see more prices and products can scroll sideways. Those who don't want more ads don't scroll. WRT navigational queries, they work the same as they always have. Sites can choose whether or not to advertise in addition to the organic result. Contrary to the public reports, this can be beneficial to advertisers since the ad creative is chosen by the advertiser, while organic snippets are chosen programmatically. This mechanism is also flawed unless it can be established that the changes are truly a revenue-increasing degradation of service quality that the competition would prevent, which the CMA do not try to do. Right, and they do state that Bing shows more ads than Google. It says that Google, but I think they mean than. This is also true of Yahoo, I believe. So the error, I think, is that the CMA, or more accurately, their economists, can't bring itself to accept that the nature of search is going to lead to the search engine getting most of the surplus from ads for relatively undifferentiated oligopolistic products. In shopping, we require that advertisers post prices, and it is known that advertising prices results in lower prices. There are studies for optometrists, lawyers, alcohol, etc., using regulatory variation across U.S. states. So, if anything, Google Shopping should push prices down. Anyhow, the short of it is that I am doubtful that the evidence you suggest will change hearts or minds at the CMA or BEIS. It may even be counterproductive. They're saying that their evidence isn't going to change anybody's minds about them being in monopoly and might be counterproductive. Why? Because the evidence shows you're a monopoly, in my opinion. And then it says, I expect you are right, but consider the counterfactual where ad prices rose over the last decade. This would certainly be touted as evidence of market power. The fact that they have remained more or less constant for a century seems to be pretty compelling. Very happy to discuss on a call if you'd like. David. Before that, Hal had written, Hi David, I don't think the CMA is thinking about counterfactuals. They are looking at actual digital ad spend, which has indeed increased. But they should be looking at total ad spend, which has essentially remained constant. In the counterfactual, where honestly though, where they say, yes, people are spending more money on digital ads, but they're spending the same amount of money as they would have otherwise. So we're not a monopoly because we're just getting more money than they would have spent on other platforms. I don't think that helps them, in my opinion. But anyway, he said, but they should be looking at total ad spend, which has essentially remained constant. In the counterfactual, where digital ads were illegal, then there is no reason why other forms of advertising would have changed. So there is no harm to the consumer compared to that counterfactual, at least on the consumer side. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about to have an opinion there. What? Then it says Claim 1, CMA. An increase in advertising costs may increase final prices. Claim 2 from Hal. Therefore, a decrease in advertising costs may decrease final prices. Claim 3 from CMA. The cost of digital advertising, which amount to around £14 billion in the UK in 2019, or £500 per household, are reflected in the prices of goods and services across the economy. Claim 4 from Hal, but the total expenditure on advertising of all sorts has been essentially constant. Claim 5 from Hal, So on average, that alleged 500-pound increase in digital advertising has been counterbalanced by a 500-pound decrease in some other form of advertising. So Hal is trying to say, well, you spent 500 pounds less somewhere else since you spent 500 pounds more with me, so therefore I'm not monopolizing. I do not think that's an effective argument. I don't know where the fuck he's going with it. Like, what? Anyway, but that's just me. And then it says, so in net, there is no incremental cost for household from the increase in digital advertising expenditure since there was no change in total ad spend. Yeah, I said what I said. And so, and then it shows what looks like should have been an image, but either it's redacted or just didn't load. And then John had written before all of that, Hal, great to hear from you. The piece is actually by my colleague, David Stallibras. His comment was that the antitrust counterfactual is not before Google or without internet, but rather with internet but without Google. But in case you want to discuss further, and because David is a very bright and creative mind who knows and is known to a lot of your colleagues, I thought I would connect you. Best wishes, John. I see why everything is so hypocritical and the arguments are, in my opinion, so superfluous now. It's because it's a dick measuring contest. Maybe I'm wrong. But isn't that all of what corporate America is anyway? So, before that, Hal had written, Hi, John. Just read your piece on passing along ad prices. Take a look at the attached in this chart. The total expenditure on ads has barely changed. Online has grown by about the same amount that print has contracted, leaving spend about the same. So there's nothing to pass along. So this is one big ass argument because Hal is basically saying, I know that you are spending okay. An article was written basically saying that advertisers, in my opinion, what I'm getting from this, advertisers are passing along part of their marketing expenses from traditional marketing to digital marketing. And Hal is saying, well, since they're spending the same amount of money they would have spent anyway, they didn't pass along anything. Really, Hal? In my opinion, this chain does not make Hal look good. Woo. So yeah. Alrighty, so today we only got through 2 things, and I really thought we were going to get more done. When I opened that first trial exhibit and it was 30 fucking pages, I knew then and there that we weren't doing shit today. But I saw that one, I knew that was going to take us a while, but this 10-page document, I thought we would get through that quicker, but there was a lot more words in there than I was ready for. Fuck. So, I'm glad I did it though, but fuck. So anyway, that first presentation we looked at, it's labeled IPG presentation for Paid Search 101, but when you open it, in my opinion, it's from Hulu and it's very Hulu focused, but it really breaks down how does paid search work. It compares ranking through paid search from organic search. It shows the ad auction system, and it shows different ways you can rank through different types of keyword matching. And it also broke down the market share of ranking through search in terms of which platforms would have the most market power for getting found online. So in that presentation, they show evidence for how Google has market dominance and market power as a monopoly, in my opinion. And then in the next thing that we looked at was the email between Hal and David and other people. And that was a big ass dick measuring contest where basically Hal wanted to basically was spending all of this argument going back and forth trying to basically argue that they were not a market monopoly because people were spending their money on ads before they were spending their money digitally, so therefore they didn't pass along any of their ad budget to them, basically is what he was saying, in my opinion, from what I got from that, right? So he was basically trying to distance himself from that whole concept of if they're an ad. You could see that back and forth, where David was like, well, you probably don't want to admit that you're a monopoly now, do you? But basically David, in my opinion, kind of poked and prodded at Hal in a way to which Hal kind of admitted everything that David said, in my opinion. But yeah, that's just me though. And so yeah, this took way longer than I thought it would. We only got through 2 trial exhibits. That puts us at 92 trial exhibits covered so far. I think this is the 18th video I've done on the trial exhibits. And I'm really glad that I've been reflecting that, we've been doing these trial exhibits, because it really does help me reflect on how I want to move through life and through society. And it also, having these streams in between other topics I've been covering also gives me a mental break and a mental distraction, so I can both address issues that are important to me as well as talk about marketing and sales and look at social issues in business and do it all together, but not always be triggered, because there's only so much work you can do if you're too upset to be productive. But yeah, I do want to do another live stream soon. I might try and do it tomorrow though, on the recent political issues related to violence. I'm gonna do a live stream on that, because it is important for me to further go into details about that. And so that is coming. So thank you for joining me today. We'll keep doing these live streams. The next one will come out when it gets out. This would way longer, but yeah. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. I will see you when I see you. Oh, and another thing coming soon, I am working on new merch coming out in my online store, so stay tuned for that as well. Alrighty, have a great day. Thank you for joining me today. Thanks for watching. Join the loyalty program at noladeafchild.com/loyalty and check in during live streams to get points for rewards.